Behind the Shades.
My name is Kristen Adams Zamora. I'm a professional face and body painter. I have been doing it now for, 12 years. I've been working on this particular project for about five. I've done all sorts of things. I work with our our local baseball and hockey team, as well as like I've just done like the Detroit Lions, and then I've done some independent film work, and I paint everywhere. So mostly I do kids face painting, but I also do the full body paintings as well. And so 5 years ago started my passion project, which is the Healing Through Body Art. Um, it started with I'm in Michigan, and in Michigan they have a huge art competition in the city of Grand Rapids, and like 200 different businesses become art venues, and they have like these big huge installations, and there's hundreds of artists that, well, actually thousands, there's usually over 1,000 artists that are involved that have different type of artwork at this big huge competition. And I was kind of blossoming in my artwork 5 years ago, and I knew that I wanted to kind of get more in the art scene, and I started going to an entrepreneur group, because I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur as well, owning my own business, doing this. And there they talked about art prize, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to do this big competition. I'll body paint in Grand Rapids. And and so I knew I was going to body paint, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into, or what it was going to turn into. I didn't know what I was in for. So I knew that I was going to do body painting, and I have, my own story. And this whole project is about bringing awareness to people, stories of overcoming like mental health issues and different traumas. And I'll get more into that. But I'd overcoming a domestic violence situation. So I knew that I was kind of when I started thinking about it, it became more intimate, and I was like, okay, I'll look for people who have gone through that and I'll paint them. So it's 18 days, and each day I did a different model. And I thought I was going to find models who had overcome the same exact situation, but this is my first year doing it. And keep in mind, I'm body painting people in the middle of a city. Like, I'm in a building, but over 300,000 people walk through this. So it's a big deal. And I was, for my first time doing it, it was a little harder to find 18 different people to paint for this. So I started talking to people, and they're like, well, I didn't have a domestic violence issue, but I had an eating disorder, or I suffered from PTSD, or I had someone who was transitioning as well. So living as a transgender, coming out as a lesbian, like 18 days, bipolar, depression, so child sexual abuse. And there are all these like amazing stories of overcoming. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Like, I keep saying that, but it was true. Because it was the hardest thing that I had ever done physically, because it's 18 days, 8 to 10 hours of painting. The hardest thing I've done emotionally, because if you can think about it, these models, the whole exhibit, I'll kind of paint a picture of what it's like for you. You're walking through, and I'm painting their story on their body of overcoming whatever the topic is. And there is signs that tell like everybody who's gone their stories up, and then the featured story for the day as well. But that model is also, while they're being painted, sharing their stories or asking questions, answering questions about their stories. And they're really in their most vulnerable state. They have pasties and a thong on because we are in public. So they're in their most vulnerable state, naked, getting painted their most intimate, vulnerable story, in front of a whole bunch of strangers. And what happened was something that I didn't imagine this happening, but everyone in the audience started sharing their story as well. So now we have strangers telling us stuff. It was stuff that they've never told people before. There was a lot of crying, there was a lot of hugging. But I think what was really beautiful about the project as well is these models are able to get painted their story and embody their story and physically wash it away at the end of the night after this really, it's a long day, a long emotional day. So and it's just really an amazing project.
It does sound amazing, especially as you tie it into domestic violence, abuse, trauma, PTSD. Now, for someone like me who this is so new to, which makes it exciting, interesting, and everything else, are they painted in a way that is representation of what they went through? Is that how it
Yes,
works?
absolutely. Yeah. So I collaborate with the models. I have a whole process that I go through with their story, and I really kind of have them sit with their intentions for art prize. I have them sit with their story, and I have a whole bunch of questions that are asked. And then I ask them things like, what colors does it represent? What things helped you overcome your story? Is there somebody that, was your support system? What would represent them? Those type of questions. And then we put together their painting, like with Callie. She went through child sexual abuse, but she also does mosaic art. So she said her story was just really about picking up the pieces and making something beautiful out of it. And so her painting, her body painting, was like a mosaic sun and moon on her body. Um, Sarah overcame anorexia, and she is like hippie child. Okay. She's my little flower child. And so half of her body we did a skeleton, and then the other half we did a skeleton that was made out of trees and flowers. So everybody had a little bit something different. And of course, if you go on my social media, you can see everyone's stories, and I'll tell you how to find it later, but you can see everybody's stories and everyone's designs. So this time around, so I'm doing it again. This time around, I am taking a little bit better care of myself during it, because last time, like I said, it was the hardest thing I did. It was 18 days of painting in a row, 8 to 10 hours a day, then all the emotional stuff. And then, after that, I had to go home and I had to clean my supplies. I had to answer emails and all the PR stuff and do interviews. And it was a lot to to try to do all by myself. So this time around, I was like, okay, well, I want to show up as the best version of myself, because I have to really hold space during the project for these people that are going through it. So I have to be really aware of my surroundings, even though I'm painting. I have to make sure my model is comfortable and that she's in a good space, and kind of watch any social cues that she might have. And then also with my audience as well. So even though I'm not paying attention, I'm paying attention. So I decided this time, I'm going to take some time off so I can show up as the best version of myself. So I'm only doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday this time around, and taking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. But that's still 12 days of painting, 12 different stories to cover, which they're all amazing, brave, courageous people. I can't even tell you how amazing. And just every time I get to know them, like, these people are becoming my lifelong friends as well through this whole process.
I agree. It's like you and everyone that you've painted are coming together to form your tribe, because each
Yeah,
person has
absolutely.
been through something, right? And for you specifically, when you went through what it is that you went through, and if you don't mind sharing, you can share that as well. When you went through that whole experience, how did it feel to paint yourself and showcase that not only to you, but to those who would see you as well?
So this is really funny because this kind of leads into a couple things, if that's okay. I got stories. No, okay. So I had a boyfriend that I broke up with that did not take it very well. And I was actually, after the whole situation, very physically raped by him, and it was very ugly. And so it took a really long time to heal personally from that. And he's in prison now. But I didn't realize, even after that whole thing was over, how it affected me, how it affected my body, how much more healing I had, even though I thought I healed. Because during Art Prize, I didn't really share my story during Art Prize. I just featured the models. But this whole thing taught me that I had to be vulnerable as well. And so I would have these people come up, and they're exchanging these really vulnerable stories. And every once in a while, because it was 18 days, all those hours in front of all those people, I'd occasionally get that person that's like, "You've got a story. What's your story?" And I'm watching everyone else be brave and courageous, and I'm just like, at first trying to shake it off of, "Oh, it's not about me, haha." But I had to get serious, and I had to be vulnerable as well, and be like, "Hey, yeah, that happened to me." It took me years to even call the spade a spade. And it was really, really cool, because after Art Prize the first time, I had like the most magical experience happen. I was in a coaching group of other artists, different type of artists, and the whole coaching event ended in a spiritual pilgrimage in the UK. And I'm a single mom at this time, and I have no intentions of going to the UK. I actually had just taken my child to Disney, and I did like a convention thing while I was down there too. So I did a little bit of business, and had fun with my kiddo. And I had a little bit too much fun while I was in Florida. And I'm a lot more financially responsible now, just so we know. But I come back on a Friday with negative $300 in my account. Okay. So, and I make my own money. So I'm like, okay, well, I get home. I'm like, all right, it's time to get to work, fix that account real quick. And I have this coach from this program get a hold of me. She's like, "We really need you in the UK." And so if you can imagine, with my bank account the way it was, and I told you that I come home on Friday, we're probably talking Saturday, Sunday, and everyone's meeting on Wednesday. Like, on Wednesday. So I'm like, oh no, honey, we're not doing this. I'm not gonna be able to make it. This is what I did. Let me tell you what I did, and this is why I can't make it. So I told her, and she goes, well, everybody that's in this group knows what you do and has seen your work. If I run it by them, would you be wanting to do the Healing Through Body art project over here in the UK with all the women? And so I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, yeah, sure. Well, all the women wanted to do it. All the women got together, and I ended up going to the UK that Wednesday. So I actually ended up flying on Wednesday over to the UK to meet a whole bunch of women that I didn't know. I was terrified. Brought my paints with me. I was able to do the Healing Through Body art over there. But I was also learning other healing modalities as well. I did some meditation before, but I really got into meditation while I was out there. But then I learned breath work, which is even more amazing. So for like people who've been through trauma that can't really quiet their mind for meditation, breath work is amazing. And then I also got, I don't know if I said this, but Reiki certified out there. And then I now do like tuning forks. So I've learned all these other healing modalities, emotional freedom tapping, things just to kind of get your nervous system through it and how to train your nervous system so you can keep moving forward and you don't get stuck in fight or flight mode. So I learned all these beautiful things, and while I'm over there, I'm doing these body paintings, and one of the gals I'm body painting, is like, Kristen, you have a story. And I'm still, I did do art prize, but I'm still at this time, I'm still, it's all about you guys. And they're like, why don't we all paint you? And I'm a curvy girl, and I've got some limiting beliefs and some things I'm working through myself. And I'm like, I paint everybody all shapes, sizes, and colors. Oh, I'm not gonna get body painted. They're like, no, let us body paint you. So the group of women, while I'm over in the UK, body painted my story and some things on me. And it was that point that I really, truly felt and understood how therapeutic it was for the paint and the brush to touch your body and the strokes and just the different temperatures. And it really puts you back into your body. So I can see how the whole project kind of all goes together, because you've got that you're telling it, you're telling your story, you're verbally getting out, but then you're also getting the physical touch and everything as well. And then, you have that platform to actually have your voice heard. So yeah.
And as you went through that, Kristen, and the process, is it that you tell the painters your story, then they come up with the imagery and the language that's going to be painted on your body, or is it that you are co-creating with them as well?
I totally co-create with them. So I'll have ideas as well. Last time, most of my designs were planned with them beforehand, but some of the stuff we came up with was on the spot while we were there, and that's what's fun about it as well. Something might come up, or I didn't think about that, or I didn't think about this, and we might move something around or make something happen. So it's just a really beautiful co-collaboration as well, because they're able to put so much input on what the design is. And, it's their story. So the design really has to represent them and their story.
So, Kristen, so when you stood there with all this paint on you, with all this imagery on you, with all these words on you, how did you feel in that moment?
It was really empowering because it really made me feel like I really addressed it. I really faced it. I was in it. It wasn't, I was owning it. It wasn't owning me. And it was turning something that wasn't so beautiful into something that was amazing.
And then the next day, when you experience this and you're looking down at your body and you're probably wondering, did I just do all that? How was the next day in comparison to the day before when you're actually going through it?
I think, you do get that like really like empowering buzz. And then it's like, oh man, I mean, mine, it was just in front of those ladies there. So it wasn't in front of a huge audience. But everyone who has gone through the project with all those people that they've interacted with, they said that they wouldn't change a thing and that it was an absolute amazing experience. I haven't had, I've experienced holding space for their exchange, but I haven't experienced that exchange on that level. So I was able to do it with the ladies, but I think when you get that crowd like Art Prize, it's a different energy. You really get the energy going,
I can just imagine.
100 people in the room versus like 5. And that's like all day, and it's cycling through,
Yeah, I'm thinking about this, and I've seen it like online, but I haven't actually had the opportunity to speak to it or to learn more. And it's becoming, I think I told you at this beginning, it's interesting, it's exciting. Now it's become like a curiosity, like, I wonder if I can do this. Like when someone comes to you and they're at that stage where they're kind of getting curious, they're kind of, stepping forward and be like, I want to see what's going on. Like, how do you get the person from, let's say, my level where they're like, okay, I'm curious, but I'm still not 100% versus someone that's like full blown? How do you get from point A to point B in doing this?
Okay, so I think like my big rule of thumb is I don't try to convince anybody of anything. I just have to check in at where they're at. And if it like matches energetically, it will happen. And I like this time around with the project, I had an overabundance of people who wanted to participate and be involved. So I had to actually say no to people. But I think it's really, I think it has, gosh, now I lost my train of thought. I'm all over the place. I'm ADHD. Squirrel. It's your job as the host. Bring me back around.
No, absolutely. And you're right. That is my job. So you mentioned that you meet the person where they are. So you don't convince them when you meet them where they are. So when you take me, for example, I'm curious. I went from being interested, it's exciting, to curiosity, to maybe I can do this. So how would you meet me where I am? Because you're not going to convince me, but you want to make sure that you can approach me and go from there. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why when I begin the process, so there is a process, for Art Prize, they reached out to me. And then I do have an application that kind of asks them general questions about their situation and to give a brief explanation of their stories. And then I do have like questions if there's like going to be any triggers and stuff like that for them. And with this project being in front of that many people, you do have to be somebody who's already gone through the healing process. This helps, this is another layer peeled away in the healing process, but you do have to be somebody that is not wearing the shame and the guilt as we do usually in the beginning of these things, where you're usually carrying some sort of baggage with it. So these are stories of people who have already overcome. Um, and that's kind of what I want to make sure is that they're in that place and that I'm not recreating any traumas. In 2017, when I first did this, I did have Ashley Carter Youngblood. She's a therapist in the area. She did help guide me through this because, like I said, my whole job was not to create another trauma. The job of mine was to get the stories out there um, and have those hard conversations started too. I think that's one of the main points of this whole project too, is to have the hard conversations that a lot of people are avoiding and not having, and having those exchange, because that's really when problems are solved. That's when we really make connections. That's really when we see another person's point of view as well, as when we have those hard conversations.
And I think this is another way to address, as you mentioned, what the person has gone through, and they have to be in the process of healing themselves, because the last thing you'd want to do is to trigger someone and then they're
Yeah.
already vulnerable because they're in pasties and thongs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
I
don't
really
want them to
stripping these
be
people bad.
right. You don't want to strip them down physically, then you strip them down emotionally and mentally.
No, no, we're trying
So
to build them up. So yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, they're like, my job too is to see beforehand, is to kind of really feel them out and to see if there is any doubt. And if there is any doubt, I usually say, well, maybe we could do something in private, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm going to be starting up after this round of Art Prize as well, is like smaller healing circles where you can bring like your 10 best girlfriends and do it with them, get your story body painted and have snacks and conversations and just really get in it, cry together and laugh together and just go through the motions. And I feel like we heal faster in groups, but maybe it's, you're not everybody is meant to be thrown into a group like that right
Oh yeah, to some people they may view it as the lion's den, but you're right.
away.
It's I think that's why support groups are so popular, because when you're in a group of people, you look to your left, you look to your right, and you realize that person is looking for a change just like me. They just may
Yeah.
be further ahead in that journey. And with that said, where do you want to take this as you're entering the future?
So yeah, like I was saying, with all the other healing modalities that I've been learning about and that I do now, is just kind of integrating them, just so people have a lot of tools under their belts. I guess being somebody who has gone through trauma and have had to learn how to retrain my nervous system just to push myself through the day, it's just reaching my hand back to those who have gone through or going through the same situation and aren't in the same place as I was, just to have the resources that I have learned, to help me get through it. And I understand too, working with people that, I've learned so many different things, I think, because there's not a cookie cutter process for all this. Everyone is different. You're not a cookie. You're not a cookie. So everybody is different. So it's going to be a different process in finding what works for the individual. And like, we're even like, I'm working with this photographer this time, and she's a very trauma informed. So I work with all these really amazing people through the process. She's been trauma trained and trauma informed, and we're like, for the models for their gift bags, we're having like a whole little kit. It's like with like fidget toys and like sour candies, just in case there is, somebody who has, a little panic attack, to bring them back to their body, to get them back in the situation. Like I said, it's to be prepared as well. I was lucky last time and we didn't really have a situation of that nature, but we're always prepared.
Always thinking ahead, and That's the best way to
Right.
do. Right? Always thinking
Absolutely.
ahead.